Hey guys, welcome back to Supposedly Fun. I'm Greg. It's been a while because last week I got my wisdom teeth taken out and I only look like a normal human being with not much swelling today. So I'm back. But the more I talk, the more it hurts. So let's get right to it. I wanted to come back today to do my wrap up for April. April was a really good month for me in reading. I read a lot of really good books. The top four books for this month are definitely going to be contenders for my favorite books of the year. They are books I really enjoyed and hope you check out and hope you really enjoy as well. I finished 8 books. One of them was a DNF, but I got far enough in it that I will talk about it with the rest of the books. I'm still doing very well on my reading goal for 2019 to read more books by women than by men. So far, of the 30 books that I've read in 2019, only 5 of them have been written by men. So I'm blowing that goal out of the water. I'm a little less strong on my goal to read more books by lesbian, bisexual, or transgender authors or featuring characters in those communities. I did get one book that counts for this goal, but it has both lesbian and bisexual characters in it, so I think it's kind of a quality check on that list. So like I said, I only DNF'd one book because this was a really good reading month for me, but I got far enough in it that I will be discussing it in the list of books that I read. So let's get to that list. So again, if you've never seen one of my wrap-up videos, the way I do this is I rank the books from the one that I liked the least to the one that I liked the best. So the one that I liked the least is the DNF. It's Lot by Brian Washington. I made it almost halfway through this book, which is why basically my rule is if I get far enough in a book that I can actually talk about it, I count it with the books that I've read and toward my reading goal, reading number of the year. I was really excited to read this story collection. It loosely follows a gay teenager's coming of age and coming out. But after the first story, I really thought that things went south alarmingly quickly. It feels like reading someone's MFA project. It's fine, but it needs a lot of growth and development to get to the next level. Brian Washington is a very young author. And some of the sentences are extremely awkward, and some of the description fully misses the mark for me. I had a perfect example of a sentence that I thought was insane, but this was the library book, and I had to return it, and I forgot to write it down before I returned it, so I don't have an example for you. I just feel like there was a lot of potential here, but it ended up feeling like budget Junot Diaz, which sounds really mean, but there it is. So that's Lot by Brian Washington. Coming in next is Too Much Is Not Enough by Andrew Rannells. I really did not know what to expect from this book because I don't know anything about Andrew Rannells other than the fact that he's an actor. He was in The Book of Mormon on Broadway, and that's pretty much it. This memoir is about his move to New York City when he was in college and his quest to make it on Broadway. It's very charming, it's amusing, it's relatable. It was a very pleasant read, even if it does cut things off just as he gets to Broadway. So there's no Book of Mormon gossip. It doesn't get to that point at all. It's not something that's going to stay with me forever, but it was a fun book while it lasted. And then, coming in at number 6, we have The Other Americans by Leila Lalami. I really enjoyed this while I was reading it. It's the story of a Moroccan immigrant family, and they're living in the Mojave Desert, and their patriarch is killed in a hit and run. So the book is about the aftermath, but the patriarch actually does take each chapter is it has a different narrator. They go back and forth, and so the patriarch, even though he's dead, he does actually have a place in the narrative. More and more characters take part as the book progresses, so it unfolds like a fan, adding detail and nuance as it goes, and I really enjoyed that. I really liked it and the way it was structured, but the ending has a sudden time jump, and there's a twist that I didn't like, and some of the storylines ultimately go nowhere. So I still really liked the book despite that, but the most damning thing I can say about The Other Americans is that I completely forgot about it. I made my list of the books that I read in April without it. I thought I had only read 7 books in April, and then I double checked on Goodreads just to be sure. I was like, oh right, that's a book, and I read it. So that does not bode well for its long-term staying power with me. But there you go. Coming in at number 5 is Women Talking by Miriam Toews. Now this is where I start getting into the books that I really, really liked. And it is heartbreaking to me that this book appears so low on the list. It's number 5. Because I really liked it. I really, really liked it. It's about women in a Mennonite village meeting in secret to decide their future after finding out that men in their community have been drugging them in their sleep and sexually assaulting them. It's inspired by a true story, which makes that even more harrowing. Uh, Miriam Taves, I think is how you pronounce her name, is an exceedingly clever writer with a unique talent for finding humor in any situation, no matter how bleak. If you've read her other book, All My Puny Sorrows, you know that that is true. Um, in any other month, I feel like this book would be much higher on the list and would have a really good shot at being my number one read of the month. It's just that I read some really good books this month. I definitely recommend you check this out. I really enjoyed it. Now, getting to number 4. Technically, I gave Women Talking 5 stars, and I only gave Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney 4 stars on Goodreads. So technically, they should be reversed. But what makes me put Conversations with Friends ahead of Women Talking is that I really enjoyed the act of reading Conversations with Friends. Sally Rooney does so much smart construction that I found myself tracking the things that she does as the novel progresses. If you haven't done that and you have the nerd stamina to do it, I highly recommend it. What's going on underneath the surface in this book is fascinating. Uh, so I don't always take notes anymore but I was inspired to do it with this one. So I wrote down some key lines, but more importantly, I started tracking occurrences of certain things. Like I noticed that the idea of performance or pretending something came up a lot. So I tracked every single page where there's a reference to something like that. And it's really interesting to see the parts where it happens a lot, like almost every page, and the parts where it disappears for about 30 or 40 pages, and then when it comes back and what's going on in the story and what that means for the characters. There are also a lot of references to being a normal person or normal people specifically, which of course I know is the name of Sally Rooney's new book, which just came out in the US. So I noticed that, and the idea of being genuine, the idea of power, love, question mark. Yeah, it's just, in a really nerdy way, I kept tracking all of the ways Sally Rooney was using these things and these ideas, and it was just really interesting. I do wish I liked the book as much as I liked the experience of reading it, if that makes sense. To me, the book was fine. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. The characters are not really likable, but it almost doesn't matter. What really fascinated me was just the way Sally Rooney writes, and having this total nerd experience of doing like a deep dive into her writing. So if you haven't done that, I definitely recommend it. And then coming in at number 3 is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Part of me feels like this should be lower, but I had such a really good experience with this book. It may be so high because the audiobook, which I listened to, is spectacularly put together. It's a Fleetwood Mac inspired story about a band nearly breaking apart as they're making an album, which in the modern era where they're telling the story from, we know is a landmark album. So they're telling this story about the 1970s. It's told in the story of an oral history, which I love. I have always wanted to write a book in oral history form, so maybe someday. And in the audio, they get a full cast of characters to read the different parts, including Jennifer Beals and Judy Greer. It's wonderful. I love the different points of view it portrays on art and addiction, redemption, forgiveness, love, betrayal, and so much more. I think Taylor Jenkins Reid fumbles a few of the details at the end, but it doesn't even really matter because I was absolutely enthralled with this production. Congratulations to everyone involved in the audiobook. It is really spectacular. And coming in at number 2 is Educated by Tara Westover. Westover's story is utterly fascinating. Born in a Mormon survivalist family in Idaho, she could not attend school because her father believed that schools are institutions of brainwashing. She could not go to the doctor because he believed medicine is poison and doctors are liars. She suffered horrible physical and psychological abuse at the hands of one of her brothers and her father as well, let's be real. At 17, she decided to pursue an education, which is a journey that took her from a scrapyard in Idaho to Brigham Young University and to the storied halls of Cambridge University in England for a PhD. Her family has publicly taken issue with her telling of how things happened, But I really like the way Westover seems to be continually searching for the truth, weighing all sides and all different points of view, and still coming away unsure. It's a wonderful book. I really like it very much. And coming in at number one, A Fine Balance by Hinton Mystery. I had a feeling I would love this book if I ever got around to reading it. It has been on my reading list for over 15 years, which seems kind of shameful. It is about 4 people living in India during the emergency, which was a 21-month period during the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. She's not named, by the way. It only refers to Prime Minister, but Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister in real life. So it's a 21-month period where she declared a state of emergency in India. And that gave her the ability to rule by decree and made... It was a time of rampant censorship, corruption, forced sterilization, murder, people disappeared. I didn't even know the emergency was the thing that happened. I should be ashamed of that. I'm sorry. But with all the chaos that is going around these 4 characters, they're really just trying to get by and live decent lives and be decent people. It is a wonderful novel about humanity, even in inhumane times. It's a very chunky book, but I was really spellbound by Mystery's writing. He has at least one other book, and I really want to check it out. Definitely prioritize this one. I think it is definitely a contender for one of my favorite books of the year. So there you go. So that is what I have been reading in April. What have you been reading? And what are you up to now? The book I am starting May with is The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Haley Rubenhold. This is a really fascinating book. I discovered this, I think it was Simon over at Savage Reads mentioned it, and I immediately put it on hold at my library. I'm really enjoying it. I'm about halfway through right now. It is fascinating. And another thing, like I mentioned that I really love the idea of writing a book in oral history form. Another thing I really love is the idea that Haley Rubenhold is giving these women their stories back, because their stories have been defined by this man who did these things to them, and nobody really knows who they really were. So she's kind of giving them their lives back, and I love that idea. That's another thing that had kind of occurred to me about writing. So definitely, so far I'm liking that a lot. But I would love to hear what you're up to, what you've been reading, and if you disagree with me about any of these books. And if you have any recommendations based on these. I have The Normal People, the follow-up to Conversations with Friends. Well, it's not a sequel, but it's the next book by Sally Rooney. So if you have thoughts on that, let me know that as well. Anyway, my mouth is hurting. It's time to go. Thank you for your time watching this video. If you enjoyed it, I hope you'll subscribe. If not, if you are already subscribed, thank you for that. I'll be back again. Until then, happy reading.